Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. Welcome to the special awareness session on the important topic of the recent revisions to the planning and development regulations of the UDA. This session has been organized by the Center for Urban and Regional Planning of the ITPSL. So as many of you must be already aware, the UDA has recently changed its planning and development regulations for the first time in, I think, something like 35 years. And these changes have been done to adapt the planning regulations to the rapidly changing face of urbanism in Sri Lanka, and also to adapt to the present and future development challenges that we face. So the objective of today's workshop is really to get a better understanding of what these regulation changes are, what the rationale is behind these decisions, and most importantly, understand the practical implications of these changes in different planning arenas such as real estate, construction, and of course, urban design. Today's proceedings will have two sessions. The first session, we will have speakers from the UDA to elaborate on the specific regulation changes and the application, of course. Thereafter, we will have a second session that will be a panel discussion by sector experts, and where we will further discuss the implications of these regulations in the various planning areas. So without further ado, I now call upon Plnr Devashriyani Jayasundara, President of the ITPSL, to give the welcome address. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Chairman UDA, DG UDA, the panelists, presenters, moderator, sponsors, distinguished participants, ITPSL council members, fellow and other members of the ITPSL. I'm privileged to address you at this vital juncture where UDA has introduced a set of amended planning and development regulations that have become controversial among some professionals and developers in the construction industry. I'm thankful to the Chairman and the DG of the UDA for accepting our invitation, indicating the genuine preparedness of the UDA for consultation with stakeholders. So-called modern planning and building regulations related to urban planning were introduced in Britain based on public health and sanitation requirements during the post-industrial revolution. Although they gradually changed to accommodate changing urban development processes, the new changes have been primarily additions to the original publications. On the other hand, more engineering-related codes, that is, structural, mechanical, electrical, wastewater management, stormwater management, etc., developed at entirely different pace. The countries under the British colonial rule inherited the same planning and building regulations which were represented in Sri Lanka by Housing and Town Improvement Ordinance, HNTI Ordinance, and engineering-related regulations under many British standard specifications, that is BSS. However, they were integrated through different tools. UDA introduced a new set of planning and building regulations in 1986, which were prepared by a team of consultants under the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP. Although it was an outcome of a consultative process, mostly among town planners, architects and engineers, the consultation with local professionals and other relevant stakeholders were insignificant. Further, those regulations were restrictive and did not support development promotion needs in the 20th century. Reduction of road widths, and residential plot sizes were direct negative impacts of those regulations. UDA introduced a few significant changes in 1999 and 2008 that contributed significantly to promote investments in the urban sector. High-rise and mixed developments in the CBD, Gall Road and Duplication Road is a clear outcome of those regulations. After that, from time to time, UDA introduced many changes to the regulations. However, they were ad hoc and mostly patchwork. Cities are engines of national economic development. Thus, the role of the UDA, as Emeritus Professor William Endis states, is to create development and generate wealth. In a more specific terms, the town planner's role is to create an enabling urban business environment. Thus, planning and building regulations should be used as a tool to regulate development, to create an enabling urban investment environment. However, the role of the town planner in modern economies sometimes gets complicated as they are responsible for guiding the spatial distribution of investment to achieve national development goals. Therefore, it is the responsibility of the UDA to make sure that planning and building regulations guide investments to achieve orderly development, but not to hinder development. Within the perspective, it should be understood that planning and building regulations are an integral part of urban development plans designed to realize the set visions. Thus, successful realization of planning and also plans that are more strategic and investment friendly in orientation. The national policy framework of the present government, Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor, provides a clear direction towards achieving national development goals. Therefore, the question of how best we can orient UDA development plans and planning and building regulations as positive regulators of attaining the objective of national policy framework should be the fundamental monitoring theme in evaluating the success of planning and building regulations. Simplifying the regulations, introducing a higher level of transparency, and expediting the plan approval processes are some of the expectations of the corporate sector in this regard. Before the conclusion, I must thank the UDA for preparing such a comprehensive document with appreciable amount of consultation with the professionals in the construction industry. Finally, I kindly request all the participants to provide their views on the new regulations as we are planning to submit the outcome of the webinar proceedings to the UDA. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, for that, for giving a broader context on how these changes to the regulations came about. I now call upon Major General Udaya Nanayakara, Chairman of the UDA, to give a special message on behalf of the UDA.
Plnr Dayapriya Jayasundara, President, Institute of Town Planners. Plnr Mr. K.C. Sugatapala, President-elect, Institute of Town Planners. Plnr Mrs. Priyani Navaratne, Honorable Secretary, Institute of Town Planners. Members of the Institute of Town Planners, guest speakers, panelists, participants of the seminar. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to thank the Institute of Town Planners Sri Lanka and the gathering here today for your genuine interest in the planning and development regulations 2021, recently published and enacted through a Gazette notification by the Urban Development Authority. I thank the Institute of Town Planners Sri Lanka for organizing this webinar and inviting me to be a part of it. As you all know, Urban Development Authority, by its Act number 41 of 1978, is mandated to guide the developments in declared urban development areas. Accordingly, UDA adopts various tools and methods to carry out its duty, and development plans and planning and development regulations are two such tools used to guide and manage the development in urban areas. As you all know, the origin of planning and development regulations in Sri Lanka tracks back to the Housing and Town Improvement Ordinance number 13 of 1915. Back then, it was enacted to address the overcrowding and sanitary conditions related issues prevailed at that time. Following to the establishment of UDA in 1978, Urban Development Authority, with the assistance of UNDP, prepared the Colombo Master Plan in 1978. And based on this master plan, UD prepared the Colombo City Development Plan and enacted it through a Gazette notification in 1985. Colombo City Development Plan included zoning proposals as well as planning and building regulations. These regulations were actually used as a prototype for developing common planning and building regulations, which were enacted in 1986 as commonly applicable for all declared urban development areas, until it was revoked by the recent Gazette on 8 July this year. 1986 regulations were in effect more than 3 decades, nearly 35 years, for all declared urban areas that are not governed by the particular development plan. Obviously, there was an urgent need to update these regulations because the characteristics and functions of urban areas have changed drastically. Cities have become more complex, and especially the people's lifestyle have changed. The current situation is a good example. Identifying this need, UDA initiated the process of reviewing and updating the 1986 regulations in March 2019. It needs to be emphasized that this process was neither short nor simple. It took nearly 2.5 years' time to complete the process. Past regulations were reviewed in depth and comparison with planning enforcement related global standards and practices. Researchers and extensive studies were carried out to explore alternatives and new methods. All relevant stakeholders were consulted through open public review, formal requests for comments, as well as thorough focus groups discussions. And it was a teamwork. There was a dedicated team assigned for this task, and the draft amended regulations were reviewed within Urban Development Authority in several rounds. UDA has many different professionals in-house, and their comments were incorporated throughout the process. More importantly, most of the professional institute hugely contributed to the process by reviewing the draft regulations and forwarding their comments. UDA welcomed these comments and had series of meetings with relevant parties to hear their comments, also further work with them as a team to figure out how such comments need to be incorporated. We did our best to ensure that all comments are incorporated. However, once it is published now, we hope that many of you would perceive it with an open mind and would appreciate its positive enhancement compared to 1986 regulations. Since these regulations are to be applied throughout the country for all declared urban areas, we had to be considerate on many aspects. I thank you all, would appreciate the attempt that UDA made to produce a general set of regulations like this as a code, because it will be easier for many practicing professionals as well as general public to use it, rather than referring different sets of regulations for each area. Agreed, there can be limitations in this document. There can be observations about these documents. And we are so open-minded about it, and we appreciate all the constructive criticisms. I know you planners well know that planning is a never-ending task as it evolves with the evolution of the settlements. So we are ready to learn your views and work with you all to take these regulations to the next step forward so that we can enable a progressive growth in the urban development sector in Sri Lanka. I thank you, Center for Urban Regional Planning, Institute of Town Planners, and its executive committee for organizing this seminar. I'm sure this institute has many professionals with foreign exposure, and I request all of them to share their experiences and findings to find solutions to rapidly changing town planning requirements. Thank you, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Major General Udayananakar, for that message and also giving a very good idea of the exhaustive process that went to come to this point. So I would now like to introduce our first two speakers for the first session. Planner Nirmala Kulathunga serves as the Deputy Director Planning at the Strategic Planning Division of the Urban Development Authority. She holds an MSc in Town and Country Planning from the University of Moratuwa and a special degree in Economics from the University of California. Planner Nirmala Kulathunga has more than 23 years of experience in urban planning. Our second speaker, Planner Yasantha Perera, serves as Assistant Director Planning at the Colombo Metro Region Division of the UDA and holds an MSc in Transportation and a BSc in Town and Country Planning from the University of Moratuwa. Planner Perera has 10 years of experience, urban planning experience. Before I hand over the mic to our speakers, I would just like to mention that we have quite a tight schedule today. So we will not be able to open the discussion to all participants for a verbal discussion. But please feel free to type in your comments or suggestions or questions that you have, and we will try our best to put it forward to our panelists and address them. But as it was said that we will be recording this session, and those comments and observations will obviously be formalized and addressed in that way. So please feel free, but we might not have the time to take in all your comments during the session itself. And just one final thing, I think everybody has already done it, but just remember to please keep your mic off during the entire duration of the program. So with that, I hand it over to Planner Nirmala. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, can I hear me? Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening, everybody. I will share my presentations now. Okay, actually, before I start the presentations, I would like to give a small kind of introduction regarding the scope that we are cover today presentations. Actually, we are expected to cover discuss the regulations, comparing the previous regulations, and what are the new things we are adapted into the new regulations, and what is the advantages of that regulation. So before start my presentation, I would like to give the brief introduction regarding the process that we follow to prepare this kind of document, this gazette notifications. Actually, UDA made the in-house discussions were made in several times with the officials of the UDA, like planners, architects, engineers, landscape architect, enforcement officers, like that. And we have we developed some kind of documents, and also we in parallel to that we obtained the comments from the Institute of Town Planners, Institute of Engineer, Institute of Landscape Architect, and Institute of Architect. That comments, and also we have obtained some kind of comments from the local authorities in the Western Forest and academic institute and the developers, so on. So the preparing the document, such the draft document, we have given to that document to get the observations from our legal director, and it has been forwarded to the legal consultants review. Then parallel to that, the drafts documents we have submitted so-called institutions for their comments again, and also it has published in our website for the comments. Then we again several discussions were made in 2021 with the so-called institutions, and also the Sri Lanka Tourist Board, Institute of Valuers, National Professional Front, National Construction Association, MBRO, SIDA, Condominium Management Associations, all local authorities in Western Coast, Ministry of Health, Survey Institute of Sri Lanka, Survey Department, Institute of Country Survey, like that. We consult all the interested institutions and the professionals, and we presented it to the minister, state minister and the secretary the same, and then again it was presented to the Board of Management of the UDA. Finally, it has presented to the Minister of Urban Development and Housing, and we got it has been published in 8/7/2001 as a gazette document. So if we come to the content of the such gazetted documents, it has 10 sections: preliminary planning clearance, land developments, building constructions, certificate of conformity, change of use, other regulations, definitions, and all the applications and annexures and the declaration papers are annexed in this part 10. So now we move to the what is the content, first content, like the in this gazette notification, preliminary plan and clearance. If we go back to our previous regulation published in 1986, actually in that gazette notification, the preliminary plan and clearances mentioned as is a written document, it's a validity period, and its renewal provisions has been only mentioned. According to this, the regulations, newly gazetted regulations, we try to specify all the preliminary plan and clearances activity. By these specifications, UDA expected to limit without standardize all the PPC that request to the request from the UDA. So according to the land subdivisions, the land extent 1 hectare or more lands.
Excuse me, Madam Nirmala, if you can just expand the presentation. I think some participants can't see properly.
Sorry.
I think you can put it on presentation mode.
Put it onto the presentation mode, Nirmala?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's now okay.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah, the inner land subdivisions that way need to be request the PPC from UDA. In a building constructions, in a residential development, exceed 1000 square meters floor area and height exceed 15 meter. And non-residential development exceed 400 square meters floor area should have to get the PPC from the UDA. And any proposed land which is located near the environmental sensitive area or it is adjoining to the historical, archaeological or architectural purposes, or it is located close proximity to the wildlife reserve or forest reserve. That kind of proposed land should also be get the clearances from the Urban Development Authority. So, and in any industrial development which is come under the Part 4 under C category of the National Environmental Act number 47 of 1980 should get the clearances before submit the building applications, and also the any constructions like water tower, communications tower, antenna towers, and transmitters, emission towers. In addition to that, any development activity related to quarrying or mining and soil or any other mineral works also get the clearance from the UDA. Here we are given to the given to provisions for the planning committee. If the planning committee unable to get the give the decisions regarding considering the proposed land, the locations of the proposed land in a critical environment, or any other, they are unable to give the solid decisions, so they can direct the developer to get the PPC from UDA. So in this situations, UDA we shall try to all the development that get PPC and is standardized without misleading the developers or applicants. So in addition to that, in these regulations, we are trying to give the regulations regarding the transferring of the PPC. Normally it's no, this regulations not we haven't to earlier, but we are included this actually is good. Sometimes request PPC request same land in several times. So we are want to mitigate the such kind of demand, and also the if the people willing to transfer his PPC with all privileges other party, we have given provisions, and if he unable to do the development by providing all the requirements in mentioned in the PPC, he can sell the PPC to another party. This type of transfer regulations we are adapted in this new regulations. Those are the things we are included in the under the PPC sections. Okay. Then now we move to the land development sections, discuss under category 2. It's in under the regulations number 7. We are prescribed the qualified persons that need to be provide the report. Here in we are mentions in early regulations we have given the provisions for the qualified persons to certify the survey plans 0.5 hectare more or less, considering the environment factors and so on. Here we are given the limitations by the considerance of the general public, the land extent 0.5 hectare and more, and number of lots 8 or number of lot 8 more than 8. So these two kind of sections need to be covered, and that type of land the town planner or a qualified person can be provide the certificate to the when submit the applications for the relevant authority, and also in any impact pertaining to the sensitivity of the environment, existing environment. In such situations, also need to be provide qualified persons requirements. So those are the regulations adapt to the qualified person in these regulations. When we go to the surveyor, the preparations of the survey plan by the qualified person, here surveyor will be act as a qualified person. In the previous regulation in 1986, all the features that mention, all the regulations that mention in such documents, we are incorporated into these gazette notifications, and in addition to that, we are given the provisions for the survey to preparations of the survey plans. The scale where normally we given to the 1 to 1000 scale need to be provided the survey plan, but in these situations we have, if the land is any larger scale, where he can provide the plan in 1 to 4000. And also we given sometimes we have to submit the land lot, small portions of land subdivide in the larger land extent. So in that situations, the applicant unable to survey the larger plot of land. So that situations, we requested from the surveyor to sketch the larger land portions, include larger land portions, mentioning the small portions of the land in the survey plan. In such situations, the relevant authority can understand the provisions, the reservations and the road reservation and the road requirements and other requirements are fulfilled, and then we can give the approval for such kind of land. In addition to that, here we are, by the concerns of the relevant local authorities in a Western province and other provinces, they are requested to reserve the plot of land for a management of the waste management, which is more than 10 lots having extent of 250 square meters. So we are provided that requirement to this regulation because of the mentions that in a small community of lands, they are unable to reach the end point to their trucks, so that the suitable locations to provide the such kind of space for manage the waste. And also, we are requested from the surveyors to reserve the space in the front page of the survey plan, having 7.5 cm into 5.5 area to put the relevant authority approval. Those are the kind of new regulations adapted in the preparations of survey plans. Now we move to the accessibility to the residential and non-residential development that discussed by these new regulations. Normally, as usual, in our previous regulations also, commercial development, non-residential development need to be provide 9 meter or more roads, but in a residential developments, it is based on the unit number of lots decided based on the road width. So accordingly, in 1986 regulations, the 3 meter, 4.5, 6 and 9 meter road respectively, they given to four lots and 8 lots and 20 and more than 20 lots. In new regulations, we also consider and limit to the such kind of road width like 3, 4.5, 6 and 9, but as said, the no changes in the lots 4 in road width having 3 meter, but the special concern have given for the 3 meter road with the road which is connected to both and connected to a more than 6 meter or more than public road at a distance of 100 meter or less, where we can provide 8 lots and we can accommodate 2 units of residential building. Same time, 4.5 meter roads, we can go up to 100 meters and only provide 6 lots. Earlier we have provided the 8 lots. Now in the same manner, the such kind of road which is connected 6 meter or more public road at a distance of 200 meter or less, where we can accommodate 12 lots. And 6 meter road, as usual, we provide 20 lots, and 9 meter road, unlimited lots we can provide, and where permissible flow area in both kind of road, permissible flow area will be applicable. Carriageway provisions, which is discussed at the regulation 80, actually in a road with having less than the road which having 6 meter or less, like a 6 meter, 4.5 and a 3 meter road, which need to be maintained the carriageway throughout the road, and if there is a need, any drains and other infrastructure facilities where need to be provided in the land side. So when do the new land subdivisions, need to be provide this kind of the required width of road as mentioned in the as it is. In regulations 18, actually we discuss in a land subdivisions where need to be 9 meter or more road. We are calling in this a larger land extents, we need to be 9 meter or more road. The end point of the 9 meter requirement, in after that you are unable to reduce the road width, you can reduce the road width up to 6 meter. Like a tree-shaped road width unable to provide in such kind of larger land subdivisions. We need to be entire land portions 9 meter and 6 meter road provisions throughout. We are expecting to in a relaxed environment and the sustainable development through that kind of subdivisions we are UDA expect. And also the subdivisions we are made, we normally need to be a limit with the physical width, but if there is any straight line or a proposed road width where it can be, the subdivisions can be made based on this such kind of straight line and road proposed road width, considering such situations. And the turning circle of providing of turning circle to the land subdivisions also important. In early regulations we are only provide the turning circle, but in these regulations we are proposed to and introduce the T-turns also, where the road width is less than 9 meter and length having a 30 meter or more, need to be provided 9 meter diameter turning circle or T-turns with a span of the 9 meter, have providing at the suitable locations to turn the vehicle. In the same manner, the road width having a 9 meter or more, where need to be provided the T-turn or turning circle at the suitable locations with 12 meter span or 12 meter diameter. Community recreational and open space requirements, also the important regulations in the land subdivisions. In early regulations, we are only these regulations are also available, and it has been mentioned the land lot having the extent 1 hectare or more, where need to be reserved 10% open space excluding the road. In these regulations, we are mentioned road and drain both exclude and provide the 10% of open space for the at suitable locations, and such reserved spaces should have to be located and appropriate locations with easy access to the all the lots, and should not be unusable lot. Sometimes the developers provide the such open space at a steep slopes area or a rocky area. That type of land we are unable to use for the purpose of requirements to provide the community recreation open space. So we are requested to provide it and as in a suitable locations, and if the land adjoining environmental sensitive or a piece in environment like a wetland or a water course, where need to be provided such open space adjoining the so-called environmental sensitive area. And the special concerns has been given in these regulations. Developer or consultant, you are need to be consider when the requirements of the 300 square meter or less, the reservation for the community recreation and open space, it can be reserved like a landscape area, walk-in track, or it can be added to into the road. In these situations, we also try to create the very flexible and very relaxed environment. Actually, when we read our National Physical Plan 2050, it also mentions the providing of the open space requirements in urban area very, very critical. And in our development plan also the deficit is very high, so that we want to try to accommodate in these situations. Also we want to try to adapt the this environment, to create this environment, and to want to create a pleasing environment through providing such kind of small space given to reserving for the road development or any kind of landscape developments. And also open space requirement. What are the open space requirements that we reserved? We can from the total extent we are given to the regulations to build any kind of building with a maximum of plot coverage 25% and the maximum height 5 meters. And also we have some kind of, sometimes we are received the applications without without getting approval and without reserving the 10% open space. Small portions of land received to the relevant authority for the approval. In such situations, we are try to give legal background to such kind of land portions by accommodating the 10% open space requirement plus service charge, additional 25% service charges. And in a land subdivisions, finally, in a land extent more than 10 hectares need to be provided a notice board in front of the land having a length of 2.5 meter and width of 1.5 meter notice board, including the developer or a owner contact details and the date of the permit and the date mentioning that we want to in the mega scale, in the large scale development, the people who are living in the surrounding environment will need to know what are the development come their land, come their location, so that this type of regulations we are newly adapted to the new regulations. And now we move to the building constructions, which discuss under the part 3, 4, and 5. In the early regulations, 1986, also given the building category like A, B, and C. Normally, category A building, which is which is high-rises building, and category B is mentioned as a special kind of building, and the category C is a small kind of building like a less than 300 residential building, and non-residential building 100. This is the regulations given in our previous 1986 regulations. Here we are got the comments from the relevant institutions, and they are given. We are not changed the category of ABC, but previously in based on the 1986 regulations, there are some amendments were made in 2009 and 2011. In 2011, amendments introduced category A, B, C, and C category again categorize C1, C2, and C3. In that situations, we are not change the category A as a keep as a high-rises building. Category B, we are included some kind of special characteristics given by the relevant institutions, like such development with wall or column located bordering the boundary, and some kind of deep foundations involve development, and the building having a slope gradient 20 to 45 degree, and also the building which have a dynamic responsive need to be considered. Those are the kind of additional thing included to the category B. Category C, totally change in the characteristic, and also the floor area also have little bit increase, like residential 500 and non-residential 400. The characteristics are listed here, and I have it is said that all the characteristic mentioned are newly adapted one for these regulations. So here we are discussing under the regulations 44. As I said, I compared the previous regulations and new regulations, the differentiations in those regulations, and this is the new regulations introduced by this recently gazetted documents. Actually, any development activity which contains floor area 1,000 square meters or more, except here we are not consider the factories and the industrial building, need to be get the green building certificate from the Urban Development Authority. Actually, this is study done by the separate divisions with the assistance of all the relevant stakeholders, and the very lengthy research has been done. According to, they have introduced the relevant rating system, how to decide the level of the certificates and so on. So in these regulations, categories of certificates we are introduced, like certificate silver, gold, and platinum. In those kind of the certificate level, actually every building need to be more than 1,000 need to be get, and they are need to be registered for the such kind of certificate level. Silver, gold, and platinum level, if developer need to be born, where we can provide such facilities, and UDA here encourage the developers, so that any kind of large scale development, the charges will here we are limited to 1 million, not go beyond that. So that in these situations we are encourage the developer to got the green building certificate from the Urban Development Authority. In a parking requirements also, the very deep study had been done, the Urban Development Authority, and we are identified some kind of issues in the prevailing regulations in 1986 and also some kind of changes made in the development, where the development plans available area, so that both documents, both the parking requirements are not in a updated one, it's a outdated one, and so that in addition to that, it is not adequately address the changes parking demand, and also it is not adequately address the parking requirements of new trend in use. That is the issues we are identified, so that we are done a survey, and we study the other countries parking providing of the parking requirement, like India, Pakistan, Singapore, and Australia. Those kind of countries parking requirements also we are study, and also we parallel to that we made the survey, and apart from that we have obtained the expertise in this field, their views. Also, finally, we prepare a research paper, and it has been submitted to the relevant department in the Moratwa University Institute of Engineers, and they are, and after that they also reviewed the such research paper, and they are given to the concerns to adapt this research finding into these regulations. Accordingly, we are adapt the research finding these documents, and some kind of small relaxations given considering the locational situation and practical issues considering. And by these documents, we are in early regulations, we have a very limited category, but these documents we are main category and subcategory elaborately discuss and like a residential, commercial, recreational, and a hotel development, so on. We are mentions what are the need parking requirements in for the proposed development. That is the study we have done for the provide the parking requirement for the proposed development. In addition to that, in a Colombo development plan also having a regulation regarding the TIA requirements, but in regulations mentioned in the 1986 we are unable to find, so that we are, as a common documents, we are incorporate the regulation regarding the traffic impact assessment requirements in these regulations. Here we are mentioned the development that need to be get the traffic impact assessment, and the site located near the very critical area, such regulations also incorporated into this new regulation. And the water supply, solid waste management, treatment of the solid waste and sewers, all the kind of regulations. Actually, when we refer our early regulations, we are outdated and we are not enough provisions for to use in current situations. So that we are deeply discussed with the relevant institutions, and we are accommodate the new set of regulations for the water supply. And here we are not for the only building, any recreational or other kind of amenities, other kind of area having human activities are engaged, need to be provide the safe, adequate, dependable, and reliable water supply. The way that we want to get the water supply also we are mentioned in this regulation. And in addition to that, we are mentioned here, if the developer or the proposed development unable to provide the pipe-borne water, or they are unable to provide the water supply, they can, here we are mentioned the alternative water sources, or alternative water sources. Also we are accommodated by getting the clearances from the relevant institutions, by confirming that the water can be supplied adequately to meet the demand of the proposed development. In addition to that, storage portable of water water to serve all the occupants and dwellings. Such regulation and the plumbing system without connections of the wastewater, how to do, and and in addition to that, if they are not available in pipe-borne water, where need to be subdivision need to be done according to providing the 250 square meters in a land extent. That is the kind of new regulations adapted to under the water supply. In the sanitary facilities, also
excuse me, Plnr,
yeah.
We have just a few minutes more if we could.
Okay, yeah, skip. Okay. On the treatment and disposal of wastewater, also we are included the additional provisions for the regulations. And I want to mention, this is the schedules are annexed in under the 13. It mentions the provisions for the sanitary conveniences, how much need to be provided in each sector of the development. We are mentioned. And also the wastewater disposal, also we are given the additional regulations in comparing than the previous regulations. Indoor mobile communications, although newly added regulations providing the any buildings need to be adequate in mobile communication facilities provide with the recommendations of the relevant institutions. We are accommodated in such regulations to the new gazette notifications. When we after getting the valid permit, we want to provide we want to comply all the conditions and limits that given. And also here I want to mention the brown color regulations. We are newly added one, and here we are newly added post permit follow-up and observations report need to be get the floor area exceeding 900 square meters or G plus 4-story building, because this is the new regulations. UDA decided to monitor we are received some kind of, sometimes the people get the development permit but they are not request for PPC COC, so that we UDA try to direct the developer to get the COC to the proposed development. So we are every once in 6 months we are monitor this proposed the issued development permits and their construction. In addition to prior approval for early filing works, we are encouraged for the large scale development. After getting of the before start the foundations works, they need to be get the permit from the UDA. Certificate of conformity also as usual we are here mentioned the certifications get from the relevant qualified persons. We are added in new regulations as the green building and also the landscape plan and also the first permit audit and monetary report. So these kind of 3 categories need to be provide the certificate from the relevant qualified person to get the certificate of conformity. Public building also the newly added regulations in these regulations, because the earlier we had regulations but is not practiced, so that this is as new regulations we are accommodate into our new regulations. And every 5 years need to be renewed the such COC from the urban development authority as it is public building, by providing all the certificate from the relevant qualified person like a fire, structural stability and the fire and other lift and other requirements also certified by the relevant qualified person. Under the other conditions we are mentioned here advertisement control, the area that we installations of the commercial advertisements here we are giving without without cover the landscape area need to be hoist the advertisement boards, and also the shapes and color need to be not like traffic signals. That is kind of regulation. And also if the building not the without here we are not allowed to cover entire front page of the building. It need to be less than 25% from the total building, and the rocks, bridges, trees, telephone poles, telephone electricity poles not be used as the advertisement board. And the reservation of expressways also the newly added regulation in this in here, because we are we have only the southern expressway and outer circular road covering regulations only, so that in these regulations we try to cover all the existing and proposed highways in entire country, and given to the provisions from the either side from the highway, highway to the toward the land side, by giving the distance, and the special concern, special regulations are adapted to in this schedule 17. Qualified person also the most important regulations, and also the inner land subdivision lands registered license surveyor will be a qualified person. In such situations the road, culvert, drains, constructions where civil engineer need to be provide their certifications. In a land subdivision, when I mentioned in the earlier 0.5 hectare or more, and the land lot 8 more than 8 lots, where town planner need to be provide his certification. In addition to that, the 10% requirements incorporate value need to provide the open market value for the land provisions. And also the category A, B, C buildings, category A need to be provided chartered architect, design need to be provided chartered architect, structural designs need to be provided structural engineer and chartered or civil engineer. And the services need to be provided mechanical or related services engineer. And in the building having a need to take a green building where chartered architect and chartered services engineers will be act as a qualified person. And category B building, chartered architect also will be as act as the qualified person, and the structural stability will be certified by the structural engineer or chartered civil engineer. Services also same. And the category C building, here in the category C1, square meters 500 in residential, non-residential up to 400, where here we are mentioned the NVQ level 5, but it need to be amended as a architect or a architect license yet. But the category C1 NVQ level 5, at least they can provide their certifications. And also the category C3 category, applicant or developer with the consultations of the civil engineer can provide the drawings to the relevant authority. In addition to that, here we are mentioned landscape provisions. The landscape architect need to be provide the layout plan, and so throughout the supervisions he has to be maintained for the recommendations of the CFC. And also the traffic impact assessment need to be covered by the chartered civil engineer with the certificate, with the coverage of the highway and transportations. Those are the kind of regulations we are newly added, and the changes we are mentioned. Thank you very much, patient, for my presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Nirmala. Planner Perera, shall we start with your presentation? Hello. Sorry. I'm not sure if I was on mute or not. Plnr Perera. Yasantha. Just give us a minute. I think we're having a few technical issues. Just give us a moment, please. I think Yasantha has, his call has gotten dropped. We're trying to get in touch with him to get him online. Yasantha, can you start? Can you hear us? Apologies, everybody. I think Yasantha is having a little bit of trouble with his connection.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, sorry for the inconvenience. There was a technical error. Okay. I quickly go through the presentation. Can you see my screen?
It's not loaded as yet, but we can see something.
It is okay.
Not visible as yet. What if you close the camera, Yasantha, so that maybe it's the bandwidth we can.
Yasantha, I can share your presentation if you don't mind. Yasantha, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear. Shall you share my presentation?
Sure. Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes, we can see it now. But we're not seeing the. Can we see the presentation format? I think we're seeing your screen.
Is that okay now?
No, it's showing as on yours how it shows on.
Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. And thank you very much for inviting us for today's session. And I'm Yasantha Perera from UDA. And next one. And this is the content of my presentation. I little bit brief you why we need these revisions, and secondly I will talk about the zone factor, and this is, I think this is the most most discussed factor in UDA and outside the UDA. And after that, I will discuss about the regulation forms. Under that, how to decide permissible development and what are the open spaces and relevant setbacks for the relevant developments. And after that, the new regulations. Okay, next one. Next one. Okay, next one. Let's move to the introduction. Previous one. Previous one. Okay, here I will brief why we need revision for existing regulation, because we know that most of common regulations are almost outdated. The basic common regulation was came in operation in 1986, and for example, as for the 1986, the high-rise development is considered as the development having more than 5 floors. But in presently, we experience that there are more developments having more than 20-30 floors. So that we decide that obviously we can decide that the 1986 regulation is almost outdated, and also that the development pattern and demand has been changed now, and also the area based different set of regulation and different practices, because there are apart that 1986 regulations, you know that there are set of development plans which have been prepared by the urban development authority for relevant local authority areas, and there are set of regulations including C forms and permissible development and such setbacks which are different from development plan to development plan. So it is a difficult situation for a user, and it is difficult for a user, since there are different set of regulation in practice, and also the due to the lacking area of the exist, that lot of unauthorized construction also. Next one. Okay, here I will explain what are the new proposals and maybe new consideration which are incorporated in this new new gazette documentation. So one is the, here we try to introduce the common practice of general regulations. As I earlier said that at the now we have different set of regulations which applicable for each and every local authority areas, and so in this time we decided to take a common practice of general regulation, then it will be easy for users. And the second one is the zone factor based density zoning concept. In further slides I will explain about what is the zone factor and what are the advantages of the zone factor. And third one is to introduce the countrywide zoning factor based new FAR form and the regulation form, and construction monitoring system, and also to give more current ongoing developments. There are in the adjoining parts, adjoining premises, adjoining buildings have been affected due to the under construction buildings. So to avoid that kind of situations, we try to introduce a system after issuing the development permit, because currently we have no such responsibility over the qualified person, including.
Sorry, we seem to have lost Yasantha again. Let's just give us a minute. Yasantha, can you hear us? Yasantha?
And next one.
Okay, right. Thanks.
Next one. Okay, I will explain zone factor, and what is zone. What is the first prior to discuss about the zoning factor, I will little bit discuss about the zoning. The actually zoning is the planning tool that can be used to control or promote the land use activity. And next one. And what is the density zoning? And it is the actually density zoning also the zoning regulation that control or promote land use activities with the development intensity. Okay, then land use zone factor is actually ratio between total expected floor area and the total developable land extent. This total expected floor area will be taken from the development plan, which to be prepared for the relevant local authority area, and the total developable land extent will be calculated after reducing the undevelopable land like water bodies and paddy areas and roads, such things. Okay, and simply the zone factor can be described as the expected floor area per unit of developable land. Okay, and the zoning factor will represent the intensity of the zoning development zone. Okay, next one. And zone category, we have, as per our studies, the zone category, I mean zone factor, we have categorized into 6 categories from 0.5 to 4.0. Based on the development intensity, it is vary from no intensity to very high intensity. For example, no intensity means the zone factor is less than 0.50, and when it is the very high intensity, the zone factor may increase 4.0. For a medium city, it is in between 2 and 3. Next one. And here I will explain what is the difference between the zone factor and the previous practices, because the zoning factor is a new coming in with these regulations. The press map the map in the left hand side is the zoning development plan in 2008 in City of Colombo Development Plan 2008. This is the actually zoning map, and you can see that there is a 8 development zone, and the difference is if you have two lands having same extent and similar extent, and also the similar access road within 2 different zones, you can have a same kind of development. The development is not very based on the development zone, because under the typical development zone, it is govern only the permissible activities. In second picture, it says that it's also a zoning plan, but including the zone factor, and you can see there is a numbers. It represents the zone factor, which means the intensity of the particular zone, and we can rank those. For example, if we take 6 zones 1 to 6, the zone factor will vary 1.5 to 4.0. It means that we can rank the zone factor based zones, development zones, based on the zone factor. Next one. Next one. Okay, here I will discuss about the regulation forms. In basically in this regulation, we have discussed about the 5 basic forms which related to the compute permissible developments. We call it as the form A to form E. And form A will give you the FAR flow area ratio for the respective zone factor, and form B will give you the number of floors for a 3 meter and 4.5 meter wide road in respective zone factor. Now form C for FAR for the respective density zone, likewise. And form E is the setbacks and open spaces. In further slides, I will explain what are those sheets and what are the inclusion of the those forms. And basically, the UDA declared areas can be categorized into two sectors. The one is the area that they have the gazetted development plans, and other one is the area they have no gazetted development plan. The form A, B, and form E is are applicable for a gazetted the area that they have gazetted development plan. And apart that, form C, D, and form E are applicable for the balance areas. That means that they have no development plans. Okay. Anyway, the form E is common for both areas. Okay. Next one. Next one, please. And here, the permissible development of any land, it's depend on the 5 factors. The one is the extent of the land. The second one is the previous one. And here I will and second one is the site frontages, and third one is the width of the road, and fourth one is the zone factor. This is in this next one, please. Mr. Tarandu, next one. No, for me, previous one, for me. Before animations, the form A, this is the form that you can decide your permissible development in particular land, and it is you can see that the land extent we have categorized into 12 columns, and the road width have been categorized into 4 categories. And the zone factor here vary from 0.5 to 4.0, and it is represented in 14 columns. And and each cell, there are more than 650 cells, and each cell represent the particular permissible flow area of the particular land. And next one, I will explain with the example how you decide the permissible development. Okay. When you for example, if you are taking a land between the zone factor is 1.5 to 1.75, and you can decide what is the relevant column for the particular zone. And if you are taking land extent in between the 1500 200, then your zoning factor surely in between the 3.4 and 6.0. Now it is reduced to 4 digits. And if you know your road width is 9 meter, then you can finally take your permissible FAR is 4.0. Simply it is a XY reading, and by using this chart you can decide what is the permissible development for your land. Okay. And apart that, there are few conditions few conditions which related to the form A. The first one is the floor area allocated for parking facilities are not calculated for FAR, and also the important thing is the FAR more than or equal to 10 shall be permitted only for the roads having minimum of 12-meter building line. 12 meter mean from center of the road. It means that total width is 24-meter building line. You can have more than 10.0 FAR if your road have a 24-meter building line. Other than that, your FAR will be limited to 1 to 9.0. It said that having a 24-meter building line means indirectly said that it is at least it should be a PRDA road. Okay, the next one. And this is the form B, second form. You can see, you can remember that the previous form is prepared. There is 6 to 15-meter roads, but there are 2 meter roads and the 4.5-meter roads. And this form is prepared to decide what is the permissible development for the 3-meter road and 4.5-meter roads, because since they are very narrow road, it is not practical to assign a floor area ratio. Therefore, we decided to assign a number of floors instead of floor area ratio. Here you can see for 3-meter roads, they can have 1 floor 7.5 sound factor. Likewise, you can decide what are the permissible development in respect to the relevant sound factor. Next one. This is form C. This is applicable for actually area that they have no gazetted development plan, the sound factor based development plan, and then they have no sound factor based zoning plan. So that we have prepared a special FAR sheet we call as the form C to take permissible development in based on the low density zone, medium density zone, and high density zone. What they have to do is they have to subdivide their areas into 3 zones like low density, high density, and medium density, and they have to get approval from the main planning committee in urban development authority prior to apply this regulation. And the FAR reading is same as the form A. Previously, if they have no development plan, means that they have practiced in 1986 regulation, and the maximum flow area ratio that can be allowed as per the 1986 regulation is 2.75. But here we have increased it up to the 5.5 when it is if it is located in the high density zone. Okay. Anyway, the FAR reading is same as the form A. Next one. This is also same as the form B. The difference, the only difference is this is applicable for the second area. That means that they have no development plans. Then also the content of the table is same as the form B. The only thing is here the permissible development is divided based on the density zone, low density, medium density, and high density, rather than the instead of the zone factor. Okay, next one. This is for me. It is very important because it gives you the all the setbacks regulations. The normally as per the existing regulation, it is called as the form C regulation, and in this regulation it is become as the form E. And here there are few changes. The one is the if you know that the existing regulation, the all the setbacks, as per the existing regulation, all the setbacks is decided by the number of floors. But here it is converted into building height. Building height will be measured from ground floor to roof terrace, and all the setbacks and plot coverage and other side spaces, rear spaces is governed by the building height. Okay, the total building height have been categorized into 4 categories: low income, intermediate rise, and middle rise, and the high rises. And and also the plot coverage is there's a 4 basic columns, and one is plot coverage. The plot coverage will be vary according to the height of the building, and also the rear space. Under the rear space there are 2 columns. One is what is the rear space that you keep when you are not taking natural light and ventilation in this end, and also the what is the rear space if you are taking natural ventilation from the rear space. And likewise, what are the side space requirement in respect to building height. And there are also 2 columns. One is side space with the natural light and ventilation, and side space requirement when you are not taking natural light and ventilation from this end. And also there is some requirement for some measurement for the light well also. Okay, and next one. Next one. Here onwards, I will explain what are the new new add-ins we have added with the new Gazette documents. Already I have explained about the what are the different type of forms that are included in the Gazette document. And as per the new additions, there are some exemption for FAR. That's the permissible floor area of the development shall exclude the space allocated for parking facilities as per the regulatory requirement. The parking requirement which are coming under the regulatory requirement will not be counted for FAR, and also the all the services area including air conditions, air condition plants and chilling plants. Likewise, all the services areas will not be counted for FAR. And also when consider the inclusion of the FAR, the parking spaces allocated for exceeded of regulatory requirement, which means that if your regulatory parking requirement is 20 numbers, but you are allocating maybe you are allocating 30 spaces. For that exceeded 10 spaces will be calculated for a FAR. Okay. And the floor area of the roof terrace where it is used for an activity other than the building services will be counted for a FAR, and as well as the balcony area that's that exceeded the 1.2 meter in width will be counted for a FAR. Okay, earlier it is 1 meter. Now this time it is this time you can have a balcony with the 1.2 meter without calculating to the FAR. Next one. The permissible floor area for the proposed development shall be computed based on the extent of the land plot, excluding the portion that fall within the straight line. Okay, you can see that for this example, your land is affected by the proposed straight line. The yellow ones shows the land extent within the straight line. When you are computing permissible flow area, you should reduce the land extent within the straight line. Okay, next one. Okay. Then how to consider the access road width? The width of the straight line shall be considered as the width of the access road for the purpose of computation of the permissible flow area, which means that when you are selecting permissible development by using the form A, you can consider the straight line width as the road width. And if when there is a no straight line, the existing physical width of the road shall be considered as the access road width. And also there is a provisions that when you agree to give the such land extent within the street line, then total road width can be considered. I mean, total width of the street line can be considered as the access road width, and also you can for as a promotion, you can consider the total land with the street line, and including the street line, you can consider for the FR calculation, since you are gifting land portion within the street line to the relevant local authority without compensation. Next one.
Plnr Yasantha, if we can, we are running out a little bit short on time. If you can speed up.
Okay, 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Within 5
yeah,
minutes.
sure. Yes,
Okay,
thanks.
okay. Sure. Next one. Okay, this is very important because this is a new new regulation in this regulation, because we know that there are limited cases that land having more than one access road and more than one site frontages, and there are three in this regulation. We have introduced three such situations, and under such situation, how we can compute the site frontages. The option one is when you have when your land is between two roads, and those roads having more than the width of those roads is more than 6 meters. Next one. Tarun, there's animation. Okay, wait here. No, previous one. Oh, okay. Then if you take the main road, the side frontage at the main road, we can consider as the A. The frontage side frontage at the main road, if we consider as the B. The current practice is we consider the both A and B as the side frontages for limited cases. But at this time we have produced the mechanism to how to calculate the side frontages in the minor roads. It is actually proportion in between the both roads. If we take it as the x means the ratio between the x. You can calculate the main road frontage A divided by the main road width, and multiplied by the minor road width. Okay, it is a proportion between the minor road and the main road. Then total site frontage can be considered at the A plus x. The total not whole B taken as the site frontage, the part of the B. It means that x can consider x plus A can be considered as the total site frontage. Next one. This is the second option. If the same scenario, but access road, one of the access road may be less than 6 meter. For this kind of situation, the site frontage can be considered as the A plus R2. R2 means the width of the minor road. Okay. The second, next one. This is the third scenario. You can have access from two roads, but one minor road is the dead one. Here, even those roads wider than the 6 meter, you can also the site frontage as the A plus R2, because the R2 road is the dead end one. Okay, next one. Next one. And this is in Colombo development plan. This regulation is currently practicing, but it is new for a common regulation. That's why I included it here. The Prasanna said that if your land is affected by building line with more than 80%, you can have a maximum of 2-storied building, maybe building subject to obtain the clearance from the relevant authority. Mostly this will be for a kind of the temporary building, because that other than that the such relevant authority will not give their consent for a a permanent building. Anyway, you can have a kind of the temporary building if your land is affected by 80% more than 80% by the building line. The second one is if your land is getting affected more than 20%, the any regulation requirement within this gazette documents can be relaxed as a allowance for your development because it is affected by more than 20%. Next one. And this is the green cover landscape area. There should be a for a low-rise development. You should keep 35% open space, and for high-rise development you should keep 50% open space. Then out of that open space, the 50% of out of that open space should be kept as the green cover landscape area. And when it is the landscape plan for the proposed development prepared by qualified person shall be submitted where the such development exceed the 10,000 square meter floor area of such development exceed the 1 hectare of land. Okay, the next one. Here some exemption. Here I will explain some exemption for the open spaces. The person said that there may be some land that you can't have with the orientation of the land. You can't have a proper site frontage at the start point of the access road. But at the mid of the road you can have maybe you can have a sufficient site frontage for such kind of lands. We have introduced a new regulation that you can have development at the middle of the site, but front portion you should keep development free. Okay, but at least the front portion, the very narrow width of the narrow portion should be at least the 3 meter in width. Okay, the second one is if your site is facing for a land in a reservation area of any water body or any forest area, this reservation can be considered as a rear space. And here the first one is if your land is getting access from access road which have no building line, anyway you have to keep 1 meter setbacks from the edge of the road. It is current it is with the current practice, but it is not in the regulation. That's why in this time we have included for this regulation also. And second one is it is a very new one because in this time we have decided to allow the swimming pool area which is not exceeded the 50% of the extent in the regulatory requirement of the rear space area, so that that kind of swimming pool will be allowed at the rear space. Okay, next one. And there are some requirements to be fulfilled when you have a blind wall. You should take the declaration from the relevant qualified person, and you should take and you should ensure the all the properties around at the adjoining premises of the your building. Next one. In this time, this is not new, but it is increase the permissible area. Here you are as per the current practices, the width of the balcony is 1 meter. It can be projected into the building line or rear spaces, but in this time we have increased it up to the 1.2 meter. And also there will be a 1 meter and if you are where the balcony or terrace is faced on the adjoining property, a minimum of 1 meter distance shall be maintained from the outer edge of the such balcony or terrace to the relevant boundary. The purpose of this regulation is to protect the privacy of the adjoining owner. Okay, next one. And same as the side wall of the balcony should be if it is a blind wall, it should be construct up to the 2 meter height to protect the privacy of the adjoining owner. Next one. And also there are some few regulations which are relevant for the condominium developments, which is come from the Condominium Development Authority. If it is condominium development is a very large one, the approval shall be obtained for the entire development proposal at the first stage of the development, and the all regulatory requirements shall be assessed for the total development considered as the one entity. And where any changes are done to the approved plan, the entire plan with amendments shall be submitted for approval. Okay, next one. And this time we have introduced some approval for temporary buildings, and it is a temporary approval which is for a 1 year period, temporary period. And you can see there are some temporary buildings like shed for entertainment, like this. Next one. Okay, this is last one. The one is 110 is that in this time we have introduced some monitoring some report that should be submitted by the qualified persons with their monitoring progress, and those documents should be submitted to the UDA when they have taken when they apply for an extension for the development permits. Their qualified person should prepare feedback report or monitoring reports from the engineer and the architect also, and they have submitted to the UDA when they apply for a renewal. And last one is the uh, the solar panel is allowed to have in the roof terrace, but the maximum width of the solar panel is the structure of the solar panel is 1.2 meter, which means 4 feet. Next one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Planner Kulathunga and Planner Perera, for that very informative session. We are a bit behind time, so we'll go quickly through the next session. We'll now turn to the second session of today's program, the panel discussion. And it is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished panelists for today. Today's session is going to be moderated by Architect Planner P.L. Silva. Mr. P.L. Silva has worked at the UDA where he handled large integrated urban development projects in the Greater Colombo area. After 14 years of service, Planner P.L. Silva left the UDA as Director Design and Project Management and formed the Avant-Garde Urban Design Partnership in 1998, where he was a principal architect for many significant projects. He later founded Design Advocacy Private Limited in 2011, and Planner Silva, where he has worked in the architecture planning building industry for over 30 years and is a past president of the Institute of Town Planners. Our first panelist is Mr. Prasanna Zoysa. He has been in the condominium real estate industry since 1998. During his career, he has held many senior management positions and has been involved in setting up over 100 management corporations for condominium buildings. He also functions as a condominium consultant and analyst for mega condominium development companies. Presently, Mr. Zoysa is the Director, Policy Planning and Regulatory Affairs for the Condominium Developing Association of Sri Lanka. We also have architect and urban designer D.B. Navaratne. He's a fully qualified in both fields, obtaining a postgraduate qualification from the University of Moratuwa and the University of Hong Kong. Architect Navaratne is practicing both professions as a consultant architect and urban designer. He is teaching architecture at the urban design at the City School of Architecture as a senior lecturer, and is a visiting lecturer at the University of Moratuwa in the Department of Architecture and Town and Country Planning. Our last panelist is Engineer Nissanka. He's the Secretary General CEO of the Chamber of Construction Industry of Sri Lanka since 2015. Engineer Nissanka has more than 50 years of experience as a civil engineer, project manager, executive director, project director and chairman, CEO of several private companies and government agencies, and has also served as secretary on several ministries. Engineer Nissanka holds an MSc in construction management from the University of Technology, UK, and a BSc Engineering from the University of Perera. And with those distinguished introductions, let me hand over to Architect Pierre Silva to moderate this session. Pierre Silva?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
Yeah, we have listened to both Plnr Yasantha and Plnr Nirmala regarding the changes and the new regulations that had been introduced. So in this session, we wanted to look at these changes from the point of view of the industry. So that is why we had this distinguished panel members who basically represent the consultant's point of view, the developer and the investor's point of view, and the construction point of view. So we will first start with Prasanna Zoysa, who will basically look at the impact of these regulations on the part of a builder or investor or a developer. So over to Prasanna.
Good evening, everyone. When we are talking about planning regulation, we have reached two milestones. That is City of Colombo Development Plan in 1999, also known as the CMR. The popular name is for this is the Blue Book, which had Volume 1 and Volume 2. Amendments were brought in the year 2008. The popular name is the White Book. Institute of Town Planners did hard work in this connection. However, after 35 years, the UD had gazetted new planning development regulations. Hope it will not be classified as a red book. Hopefully, it will be a green book, and it is very important that the real estate developers to move forward without any bottlenecks. Our association is aware plus points and minus points of the new planning regulations. Next one, we go to part 1. Regarding preliminary planning clearance, we propose the validity should be 2 years. The reason for that is, in the preliminary planning clearance, generally, we have to take clearances from 15 to 22. So once you take all the clearances, 1 year is straight away gone. So we would like to propose the validity period straight away for 2 years. Then again, related to clearances, Condominium Management Authority, CEP, gives 3 years. ECC of UDA give 2 years, and Water Supply, Drainage Board, and Coastal Concern will give only 1 year. So we would like to synchronize all these things as a regulator to request everyone, the institutions, departments to give 3 years. Also, finally, on that subject matter, the maximum validity period is only 2 years. So we would like to propose it to 3 years. Next one. Where there are exceeding 1.2 acres of land, and if they are subdivided into 8 plots, a qualified person must be certified. Our association, we have no problem with that. That's fine. But I was very concerned about 9.14. When there are 10 lots and more than 250 square meters, a 20 square meter space should be allocated for waste management. However, Nirmala explained, because we were in the view, it was not clear, this part of the land will be gifted to local authority. However, I think it is not the case after explanation. So if If this arrangement is exclusively to store waste generators exclusively from the lots related to subdivision and no outside waste will be stored, then it is in order. Next one. Regarding 10% should be given when you're subdividing 2.5 acres of land for recreation purposes, it should be reserved. And number 2 says such reserved spaces should be given gifted to local authority free of charge. So I am very concerned about it. And we also have seen the deed of conveyance template. On the 3rd schedule, also they are asking for the right of way from the local authority. We are fully aware gated community housing project and also known as cluster home projects. Planning, also known as planning unit development. As per the social background of the end users, the developer can construct common facilities or common features such as playgrounds, community halls, daycare centers, libraries, etc. Or when you look at other social background, they can construct swimming pools, clubhouse, gym, cricket, badminton courts, and central garbage collection rooms. Managing and maintaining these common features with the local authority has been a failure when we look at our previous projects. However, the newly introduced homeowners association will be the perfect arrangement. Regulator is the CMA. They will register the association as a legal body. So both regulators, UDA and CMA should work or discuss together and take it to the next level. The bottom line is this 10% of the land with common features should be gifted to the homeowners association to maintain and manage and administer for the benefit of all the members of the homeowners association. And this association will have a constitution, bylaws, and house rules. It is the practice of the of association is looking at. Next one. The development permit issued under this regulation, it is generally issued for 1 year. Considering pandemic situation and COVID-19 situation, we would like even a temporary basis within the laws of the UDA to give it straight away for 2 years for a limited time. However, this could be discussed with the authorities concerned. Next one. This is regarding the roof terrace. This is a tough call for all condominium developers, where we have the limited FAR, limited heights, and limited number of floors. As per the new Gazette notification, we can have only a lift, motor room, overhead water tank, hopefully newly introduced communication room. These are classified as necessary items. However, the association would like to propose to allow at least a common toilet to be constructed. And also, there's another request, swimming pool can be constructed, but they won't allow to construct the changing rooms and the toilets. And if it's a limited FAR, they can't do it, and it will be considered as an additional floor. So there's a mandatory requirement from Condominium Management Authority to construct the community hall. So if the regulator can allow these features to be constructed without affecting the FAR or within not taking to the computation of the FAR and not considering as an additional flow. Number 7, next one, the schedule of parking arrangement. Now in this, there are 2 categories for residential, first category and the second category. It says apartment or flats with or without pool, gym, supermarkets. But these are common features or common elements of a building. The second one, they classifying apartments, so flats with additional luxurious facilities, clubhouse, penthouses, and other. The topmost floor is called a penthouse floor. It can have a 1-bedroom apartment, 2-bedroom apartment. So the classification has to restructured. However, if we synchronize the first category and the second category, it's very simple. Any residential apartment, 1 parking space for 1 unit with a gross floor area of a limit less than 200 square meters. So if you have less than 200 square meters, is 1:1. If it is more than 200 square meters, 2 spaces for 1. So this we are okay with this. However, it says regarding visitor parking, to provide 1 visitor parking for 10 units. It is little bit tough from the developer's point of view because parking will be connected to number of apartments. So if parking is more on visitors, number of apartments will be less. So we propose 1 visitor parking for 20 units. This is the view of our association. However, service apartment, 1 space for 1 unit, that's fine. And studio apartments, the same arrangement, it is fine. However, it is not clear on mixed development. So the regulator will have to check on this subject matter. And in a condominium building, if there's a supermarket, of course, it will provide 1 space for 50 square meters in a mixed development. So that is within the regulation, but the category is wrong. We don't agree. So the features, so I explain how it should be synchronized. The next one is regarding the treatment plant, 75.8. So it says a condominium housing development exceeds 15 units, there should be a treatment plant. So end of the day, it is the cost factor for the management corporation. If these 15 units, even with the city connection, rate per square foot is about 18 rupees. So we propose it should, if it is exceeding 30 units, then we can have a treatment plant. Otherwise, it will be not user friendly for the project. We go number 9 regarding solid waste management. The new regulation says a residential building exceeding 400 square feet should have a solid waste management clearance. However, earlier normal practice is a condominium building having G+4 floors and more than 8 residential units should obtain a solid waste management clearance from the respective authority. Reason for that is, even if you put a single-storied house with 400 square feet, you have to give 13 feet height clearance on ground level so that the garbage truck could be parked. So that's going to be a tough call. So these are concerns. Since the time is running, I have got given a few minutes. So I will hand over to the next person, and these are our concerns. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Prasanna. There were a lot of practical recommendations in order to make the process much more easier and user-friendly. And we will now invite Architect Navaratne to make his comments from the point of view of a consultant and a designer. Over to you, Navaratne.
Thank you, Piyal. I first of all thank Town Planning Department for their Town and SLTP, Sri Lanka Institute of Town Planners, for organizing this event. And I also thank Planner Nirmala and Yasantha for that elaborate explanation and explanation of the UDA regulations of the new gazetted regulations. First point that I would like to bring up here is I think we have lots of planners and all the experts here around. We should know that, say, from national point of view, our economic development plans are generally not connected with the physical development plan. I mean, it's nothing to argue about. This is how it happens. And then this is also not much connected with the infrastructure development plans of the country or the city for itself. And non-connectivity of these activities have resulted lots of issues, which we can see some of them we are trying to resolve by regulations and planning. So with new planning and development regulations should contribute to the development of a livable city. Livable city is not only having facilities and infrastructure. One need to have an environment suitable to the society, urban public realm suitable to the country, particularly city, particularly to culture and subcultures. What I mean by that is that the public realm that you create in Colombo will not be suited the same way in Kandy or Jaffna. That has to cater to different social stratas. Though we talk about inclusive public spaces, it is not always so. Public spaces created Torrington Colombo 7 will not be suitable for a suburban urban area. Development guide plans similarly, if you create public realm and spaces on say Sahaspura is a different one because of the subcultural situation. Need to identify importance of human behavior and environmental psychological factors as well, because this is what we ultimately is going to enjoy as a city. Why I said this thing is that we have looked at new regulations, but then what we have seen is just a different form, slight changes to the original regulation that we have been doing, and whether this whole thing will bring us into a new public realm is something that we'll have to be discussing at a bigger forum, I suppose. Then change you need cannot be done by a single or two or three professional groups. It has to be a collective effort of planners, urban designers, urban infrastructure design engineers, architects, landscape architects, sociologists, economists, etc. Because at the moment, I think this effort is not collective. But I heard that it's a good news that Urban Development Authority has created urban designers cadre, so that will help to bring in design element into these development plans and developments that we are proposing. Then another issue that I have seen from 1988 regulation is passing of infrastructure development, certain infrastructure development requirements to the developer. I think the Developers Association will agree with me. All planning and development regulations prepared so far had clearly reflected it through the regulations, because some of the regulations, for example, developer has to go from one authority to another to verify whether they have adequate power, infrastructure requirements, sewer requirements, water supply, and they might have to find it for themselves before they develop. So I think this is one of the key factors that we should mitigate in the urban development sector, because that has to be done. So that finally, this burden is given back to the developer as provider generator, provider water supply, say water treatment plants or water sewerage plants, etc., will burden the developer. So that is, sometimes it is the city issue which city should be resolving, and not only that, sometimes it comes into the stormwater as well. Say the other one is from the designer's point of view, document with urban development vision or implement and shift this need. Say what happens is, if you have an urban development vision, general planning and building regulations need to be replaced with certain definite urban development guidelines of the city. Designers do not have city vision to respond to. They don't know what to respond to. From 88 to date, you could see from the buildings that we have got, the public realm within which that we are walking through, we know that there is vision is not given in those development proposals. Design could be designer cannot respond to a set of regulations only. He can comply to that. But a designer, say for example, cultural and tourist city, or a commercial and financial hub of the city, and some sort of a thing will give a designer a point to respond. I do understand that UDA again starting such designs, such design visions, but need expert participation for its success, I suppose. Then I will get into the questions. Number one, as Mr. Prasanna just said, I totally agree and I endorse that why planning clearance is limited to a validity of 1 year, which is absolutely not adequate, because all the, say, while you take all the requirements of planning clearance and everything, and that itself will take 1 year. And then if you are doing a master plan or certain development plans, then it will take another few years. And by that time, your planning clearance is gone. So then say, but I'm asking the Urban Development Authority, why it is limited to 1 year, when you say in your 104, in your regulation itself, 114, that this is valid for all planning, these regulations are valid for 10 years, then what is the reason to give 1 year of planning clearance? At least, I think, not 3 years. The planning clearance is a stronger thing for people to plan their development in their lots of, say, the land areas, and they need at least about 5 years of planning, master planning, and things like that happens, because at the moment, I have seen from the previous regulations and this regulations also, that we look at this total development as single plot development. All the regulations are for that. But actually, the development means, like, say, Crescat developments and other developments, waterfront developments. They are master plan developments where different buildings will come at different times. So that time frame must be taken into consideration. It's not only plot, say, 6 per 10 per 20 per block, but these developments also need time. So I think I would say that planning clearance should be at least for 5. Then the investor will definitely have a strong basis to plan his development and his return on investment. So that's a business aspect of it. Then say why this? I do not know 18.5. When you go from regulation 18.5 from 9 to 6 meters, because sometimes I do believe that, say, in the residential plot, say, site plan developments, you need these better environment or better open spaces, I do believe. But still, but then you have to be efficient in your usage of land as well, because we do not have money to spend lots of infrastructure development, and that costs the land development costlier, so that people cannot afford to buy a land. And when they buy a land, their investment has to be equally good, equally high to catch that land value. So therefore, I think we should look at that very carefully, because you might not need, say, if it is 1 plot or 2 plots, you don't need another 6-meter lane. Then 27 point for about advertising, and say, do you mean that it is a public consultation? If it is a public consultation, then that procedure must be very clearly identified, because otherwise most of the development will be barred or stopped by people, those who are not interested, or those who wants to stop the developer, or some reason they could put something and then stop it for a longer time, so that we should have a very clear picture for this. Then development permits issued for 1 year. It should be definitely according to the size of the construction, because if the construction is, say, it will take about 2 years, 3 years, then it shouldn't be 1 year, because each year there's no need for you to, because you are not going to change the regulations, change anything. Then that is another point that I would like to bring out, that it should be based on the amount of development that you have to do. And if it is a stage by developments, then the total thing must be approved, and then stage by stage COCs must be given. Then say, if the construction takes more than 3 years, which is possible, you can give stage by stage developments. Then that there must be provision for that sort of arrangement as well, because then the developer will have a certainty that his development can be done within these 5 years. So sometimes most of the payback periods of say of these developments will be 5, 6, 7 years, and they have to be assured of that. Transfer of say, sometimes, say, you talk about transfer of these development permits with 25,000 rupees. I don't know why that much of money is needed. Anyway, that's just a thing. But renewal charges for planning clearance, 25% and 50%, and all that is, I don't think, is just a mechanism to perhaps bring money in, but those are development hindrances, I would say, which I can find in these regulations. Then building type schedule. What is the difference between C1 and C2? But I think Planner Nirmala explained that there will be two categories of experts. Perhaps that is the reason. But then I would like to point out this point, because although the buildings might be less than 400 square meters, there could be specialty buildings, which are like medical centers. Then there are X-ray room facilities, laboratories, and they will be like 400 square meters, but their expertise requirements and the public responsibility for those buildings are there. So I think that we might, without just saying 400 square meters and it is boundaries and other restrictions, we'll have to be very clear of what this is. And then there is a definition, even you are defining it in your elsewhere, say that is 41C, I think, public building. So what is a public building? And that definition should come into the regulations, because then you could say that the public buildings should be done by professionals, because they will be responsible to the public, because they will be responsible and they are guided by the acts of their parliaments and acts of their professional things, and they will be responsible for negligence. And so then who is professionally qualified is governed by CEDA. So CEDA is making that, and some of the people that you are listing are not there, because say there is another danger in your regulations, is that say you are infringing at certain points into somebody else's territories, which might which might bring you trouble with these regulations, because some of the things. Then I must also say, when I said that, the other territory which is not clear in this building regulations is the fire territory, because we don't have gazetted fire regulations, or say we get a fire certificate, and this fire certificate says these things to be complied, and say comply with NFPA, comply with British codes or Singapore codes. So I mean, those codes themselves have their own conflicts. So that is something that UDA could take, or CEDA should take it over, and then we should have a published fire regulations. But you are infringing in some of the regulations by having certain regulations expressly stated in your regulations. So there is a bit of a conflict in that. Then number 4, existing buildings falls into which category of building? You have to tell who will be qualified to deal with existing buildings. And existing buildings must be conservation buildings. They could be buildings which are identified buildings, etc. So those must be clearly identified, I think. Say existing building category, we might have to expand on. Then 46.3, say providing parking. You have said providing parking is say additional parking also will be considered for the FAR. I think this is something that you will have to look at from the point of view of the urban context and the usage of the building. Sometimes say certain IT sectors and things like that, where there is a need for the business reasons for them to improve the parking, which actually will take certain burden from the public areas of the township or the city. So that I think that regulation could be looked at then. Then you have increased your 1.2 to balcony is good, which is a very good thing, which I think is which is very good. But you see, I don't know whether you have taken into consideration, because generally for usage, 1.5 meter is the best, because then you can keep your chair or something in the balcony and sit. So that is something that you could look at, whether that will be able to say, because 1 meter was definitely a minimum, and 1.3, I must congratulate you for doing that. That is quite good. Then another one which I saw in the regulations on, say, that is on toilets, public toilets. You have said, say 1.5 meter minimum when there's a shower and WC. But actually, in fact, you could make it 1.2 minimum. If you look at the building standards and standard books, you could see that how do you do with 1.2 width reduction, but you can make the length higher, but still you can do that. And that's another point. That I would like to bring in. Then Form E, which was explained. Yeah, it is true. Some of the things you are bringing from the earlier regulations, the natural light and ventilation wells and all these things. But I do not know whether you have really looked at the, say, scientific side of it, because it is quite, some of them might be less, some of them might be more in this. I just stop at that, because I also have not been able to look at your new regulations to see whether this is good or bad, or this will have any hindrances. But I wonder it's whether you have done this with any scientific reason. Say another one on the best example that I could take about the percentage of plot coverage. Sometimes in high rises, with my experience, when you give 60%, you end up with bulkier buildings. But sometimes when you make your building form thinner, good example is Altea. If you take, say, I think it's about, say, when you go up, it reduces to about 20%, 30% or less than that of the plot coverage. So say something that we should do, because we just give a blank plot coverage, and developers tend to maximize the plot coverage, and then you say whatever get the form is the form that you get into the city. So I think there should be a certain flexibility that should be given from a minimum point to maximum point, so that, and that might even related to the height of the building, so that the form of the building. But I don't know whether you have done any studies, say, due to these regulations, due to your new zoning factors and all that, whether we have done areas with certain models, whether those models will give you a certain condition or certain morphological or rather forms to the city. So I think that is an exercise that we should do. I also cannot say whether what you have done is right or wrong, because I would like to know whether you have done such studies, and if not, I think it is better that we do such studies and then decide on those things. Then in case, this is item 50, that is clause 50, in case one road is a private road, why shouldn't you consider it as a front face also? Because I do not understand your principle of say private road is also, if it is 6 meters or 9 meters, it's open space. So that say that's a open space. What is the principle in which that say these open spaces are not considered in considering the regulatory requirements? Say, for example, you have a if you have a back 6 meter road, if it is a public road, then you are given those privileges. But if it is a private road, you are not given. So I do not know what is the reason for it, because all this is related to solid to wide ratio and say how the Nolly map works and all these things. So those are the things. Then say 51, regulation 51, where we need little bit of clarification. Yes, you need, if you can, please clear this. 51 in case which is not clear to me. I don't know, maybe it's my fault. 53 where proposed development may cause adverse impact on the vehicular traffic flow in areas, environmental conditions of the surrounding, social, all that you say, and complaints with the regulatory requirements specific of these regulations. So this is bit say it should be more clearer conditions of, because where any proposed development may cause adverse impact, then say that is being say that gives a authority I think certain power to stop this, which I think will create a certain ambiguity for sure. So I think that has to be clearly stated on what conditions of them that they could do. Say the authority may limit the extent of any development, notwithstanding the proposed development. Say on say what is the procedure for it. It has to be very clearly stated, because this could be used. Then 58.2, why do you say with may be considered? With may be considered. It should be clear. 58.2. 58, where the owners agree to give the land, and say then what you are saying is may consider or not. I think that should be clear, or shall, or something like that, because those are the ambiguities which creates certain doubts in the regulations. Then RAS plays regarding public, I have discussed. Yeah, that I also said. Schedule 7, minimum width of the toilet could be 1.2. 68.2, the height of the stair handrail. There is again a ambiguity, because fire will require 1.2 and you are specified 1.1, and there will be a conflict there. 69.6, again, fire requirement should be covered by fire regulations. And you bringing it 1 or 2 here might bring in certain ambiguities and certain conflicts. Indoor mobile communications you have brought in, it's good, but then should it be mandatory? I do not know on what basis that it was, because it might say, because say the suppliers and others might have an advantage on this, because if somebody doesn't want, because mobile signals and things like that, people in the world, some of them do not consider as good, then say there could be certain restrictions, or say certain personal biases on this. So I think this is something 79 that has to be looked at very carefully, because I think it's sometimes it might be the requirement of the person who doesn't want any mobile signals in his building. Then 99.1, which is again important. .1, you talk about people being able to bring in objections. Fine, I totally agree. If that must be there in the city. Sorry, 99.1b, yes. There is a point, but then with that objection, there must be certain procedures that we'll have to have as per these regulations, because then we will be clear of even if objection comes in, because objections can come in different ways for different reasons. So I don't have to explain that. Then then there must be a certain quicker way of resolving it, because otherwise somebody in ulterior motives or certain can be used this for so that procedure must be very clearly stated. Then the other one is then of course in the 140 you say this one should be valid for 114 talks about the plan should be valid for 10 years. So in that context, coming back to the planning clearance and the building regulations, if we are quite sure of this 10 years, I don't expect 10 years to be of the planning clearance to be expected. I know this has to evolve and say 3-4 years, but 1 year is quite a small period for absolutely sure. So at least planning clearance 5 years, and buildings and construction for depending on the construction requirement, maybe 3 or 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. If it is a master plan proposal and developmental stages, depending on that should be given. So I think a few more, but I don't want to take time.
We are also running out of times. I
will conclude at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nava. I think we'll straight away go into Nissanka because we are running out of time, and then we'll come back. Yes, over to you, Nissanka.
President of the Institute of Town Planners, good evening to everyone. This regulation what we are discussing today was published in July 2021. Actually, it is published combining 10 regulations that have been published from 1986 to 2011 earlier. That is amalgamation of and improvement of 10 earlier regulations. So now, in that sense, it is a good initiative by the UDA, where now one has to look at only this regulation instead of having to refer 10 regulations earlier. Having said that, in preparing these planning and building regulations, what is the vision of the UDA? What is UDA expecting, the expected development in Sri Lanka? Now, do we expect that within the next 20-25 years, at least in the Colombo and suburbs, there will be a development similar to present-day Singapore and Hong Kong? So if that is the vision that we are planning to cater for that kind of development, then these regulations should be more proactive for development. Going through these regulations, I feel there had been certain consultations earlier, but those consultations have not gone into these final products. And now this our Chamber of Construction Industry is represented by all the professional institutes and the other industry stakeholders. We have got several submissions from Minister of Engineers, Minister of Architects, then Survey Institute, complaining about these regulations. That they had made earlier submissions, but then those things have not been considered. So that is why now these regulations are creating dissatisfaction among professionals and developers. For that matter, I would say even Chairman of Construction Industry Developer Authority, who is part of the same ministry, has sent a strong complaint to the Ministry Secretary about certain sections in these regulations which is transgressing on the authority given to CEDA. I'll come to that later. Now about the land subdivision regulations, which is part 2 in this regulation, we had several representation from the Survey Institute and Survey Council. As per this regulation 4.1, no person shall carry out or engage in any development activity related to subdivision, amalgamation, or development of lands without a development permit obtained from the relevant authority, that is the UDA. Now, what is the position about testamentary cases where the district courts will give rulings or judgments based on the testamentary law and the Partition Act? Then and then other area is plans prepared on Land Acquisition Act, and then for various development purposes, the lands acquired by various government agencies through the lands commissioner, those plans, and then land developed under the subdivision plans prepared under land development ordinance. Now all these may not be following these regulations. Now under section 11, it says in an event the proposed subdivision, amalgamation, or development fails to conform to these regulations, the relevant authority may direct the developer or his agent to amend the proposed subdivision. Now, in a testamentary judgment, are they going back to the court and say this is what the local council is saying? So, in fact, this issue came to the Presidential Commission on Simplification of Laws and Regulations, and a recommendation was sent that these land subdivision regulations should not apply to other subdivisions, to subdivisions done under other statutes, because it is going to create a lot of problems if we try to implement this for testamentary cases and subdivision under land ordinance. Then on the construction regulations, all buildings with ground plus 4 floors and above, or exceeding 15-meter height, are considered as type A buildings. Type A, a building considered ground plus 4 floors or more, or building exceeding 50 meters. Now we are talking of buildings going up to 90 to 100 floors in Colombo. So when we have all those buildings classified under Group A, it's not practical. So I think this type A buildings should be classified into at least 3 different categories. Say A1 middle-rise buildings from 5 to 12 floors, A2 high-rise buildings from 13 to 20 floors, and A3 very high-rise buildings more than 20 floors. And those who can design, supervise should be categorized accordingly. The other area which is this regulation is transgressing on other acts is the definition trying to be given for qualified persons. In the UDA Act, there is no mention of qualified persons anywhere. So then from a regulation, you can't define a qualified person if the main act does not mention about qualified persons and gives an interpretation. The qualified persons are included under the Construction Industry Development Act, Section 26(1). The authority, that is CEDA, shall maintain a register of persons recommended by the Credentials Committee as being qualified persons in the following disciplines: engineering, architecture, quantity surveying, environmental and public health engineering. Those are the categories. And in Section 67, the interpretation is given. Qualified person is a person who is competent in carrying out designing or preparation of required contract documents or supervision of any identified construction works, whose name is included in the register of qualified persons. So now that is the legal authority given to Construction Industry Development Authority. Now here, if UDA is trying to give a different interpretation to qualified persons, then it is going to create problems. In fact, the chairman of Construction Industry Development Authority has complained on 19 July 2021 to the secretary on this issue that he had written even in November 2020 on these issues, but it has not been considered in drafting these regulations. That is much before these regulations were gazetted. Then in Schedule 3, Section 3, that is the classification where which type of person can design buildings. For building category C1, it says at least drafting technology, building and NVQ level 5 qualified persons. NVQ level 5 qualified person can undertake the design of these buildings. Now, what are the C1 buildings? According to this classification, any building up to 4 floors can come under C1 buildings. So now this is an area, I think, which we have to seriously look at, because C1 type buildings can be with 4 floors and on a sloping ground, even on a sloping ground of 19.9 degrees. So this type of building, whether NVQ level 5 person could be allowed to design, is a moot point, and that is realistic. Now, a few days back at a webinar, we had a presentation from a senior architect from Singapore. And he said in Singapore, buildings are not allowed to be designed by non-qualified architects. Only qualified architects are allowed to design buildings in Singapore. Of course, in Sri Lanka, in the rural areas, it might be difficult to find architects. So in which case, I think the C1 category will have to be reclassified and to allow much simpler buildings to be undertaken by the NVQ level 5 draft persons. Then I come to section 73:16, traffic impact assessment. Now, we find that this is an issue that is creating a lot of delays in granting the development permit. We have identified, in fact, this was discussed even at the Presidential Commission that I mentioned. TIA, the Traffic Impact Assessment, and the EIA are two critical areas that impact, leads to delays in the issuing of the development permit. Now, when we go through records, we have found that the issuing of a development permit can take anything from 3 months to 3 years. There are projects which has taken 3 years with no strong reason to delay. And now this TIA, referring to TIA, the size of a development is limited by the access road width, zone factor, FAR. And on a 3 meter wide road, maximum 3 floors will be allowed. So if that is if with those controls, will eventually control the traffic volumes also emanating from a development. So with such situation, do we need a traffic impact assessment? We know now there are certain instances where building projects facing Gold Road had to obtain the TIA. Now with such TIAs, what do we expect? Are we planning to make Gold Roads widen more? So I think this TIA is not really required because the traffic volumes are controlled by the other developmental factors that is included in these regulations. Of course, we must say that there are certain positive changes included in this new regulation, like considering the road frontage, in use of the rear space. So those are positive features. Then about the 10% area reserved in large developments, whether it should be started with the authority or the local authority. It has to be thought carefully, because there have been several instances where these areas reserved for community purposes have been sold by the local councils to private parties. So I think it is better these 10% area allocated for community purposes is vested with the homeowners management corporations, so that they can look after, well, it is in their interest to look after that property. And in fact, in most places where it has been done, it has worked quite well. Then about the public buildings, again, if you look at the Construction Industry Development Act, it specifies identified buildings. Now, all identified buildings can be considered as public buildings. They are public as access. That is how that definition goes there. But now in these regulations, as Architect Navaratne said, there is no interpretation for what a public building is. So maybe we can use the same interpretation as in the Construction Industry Development Act for identified constructions, because that is already established fact. It's a legally, it's already passed act. Then one important missing factor in these regulations is the regulations specify who will design the buildings, who will supervise, but it doesn't specify who will construct. So I think it is very important that contractors registered with the Construction Industry Development Authority with the relevant registration should undertake these buildings A, B, C1, C2. That should go into these regulations. Now, even that disaster at Vellavath, if you want to avoid that kind of disasters, we have to ensure that these are designed by professionally qualified people and constructed by recognized constructors. Then about the fire regulation that was mentioned by Architect Navaratne, I must say this has been already gazetted by the Construction Industry Development Authority. It was gazetted somewhere, I think, last year. So now all have to follow the fire regulation published by CEDA, which was developed along with the fire chief. Those are the points which I want to raise, and I want to cut down because we are almost 9:10 now. I think I'll wind up with this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Nissanka. Now, there are a lot of clarifications and questions asked by the audience, and there are a lot of requests in the chat box as well. But I don't think we will have time to go through all this and answer. But what I suggest is that we will list out most of these clarifications that have been asked. We'll refer it to the UDA and get some clarifications. But since we are running out of time and we have already passed 3 hours marathon session, I would like to summarize some of the basic things that were discussed. I think in all, the regulations were mainly a planning tool that is applied to regulate development. But now, as everyone suggested, this has been an update who suit the changing situation. But as you would have heard, the real stakeholders have many issues that has been resulted from these updates, so which inevitably suggest that further improvements and amendments are required. So I am happy that Chairman UDA mentioned that he has an open mind to take on these recommendations and conditions in order to improve and update the regulations further. Now, one common thing that we noticed is that most of these regulations were based on responses for the issues that has been faced by UDA from time to time. So it's more of a case-based response to the situations rather than a kind of a holistic look at the situation and try to come up with some rationally based response to the improvements. I am not saying that some of the things are bad or we should discard everything, but I'm saying this in the spirit of a opportunity to go further and improve this and address these issues, because as Nissanka rightly mentioned, a building permit sometimes takes more than 3 years. And by the time you get the permit, the context on which you have started the development has also changed. And then the viability and all the considerations that the investors and builders are putting into at the beginning is no longer valid. So I think this process part, which needs to be addressed, which I didn't see in the regulations, you are trying to address the spatial considerations of the regulation, but not the process and the outcome of the regulatory procedure. So that needs to be addressed somewhere. I think in order to do justice for people who are expecting the development permits for the purpose of undertaking development, I think that needs to be included somewhere. And also, we also noticed that there are in the regulations also they are provided for it. Now there are existing building permits which are being constructed based on the previous approvals. Now we'll have another set of approvals which is now coming, which will have a certain advantages. So there was a clarifications requested by somebody asking whether it is possible for a person who had got a permit now, if it is possible to have a additional flow area or whatever, whether he is eligible to get a revision done for the application. I think UDA will have to clarify. Maybe Yasantha or Nirmala can enlighten us on that. And then there was basic fundamental things like parking, land subdivision, and as Nissanka suggested, there were certain legal issues. And in the Construction Industry Act, there is construction audit, although it is not implemented now. I think one day it's going to come. So how that will conflict with this kind of construction monitoring that is being introduced in these regulations, because we must try and simplify the procedure, because if you want to have monitoring reporting to UDA and then construction audit to CEDA, in all that is going to add to time and add to cost and all that. So we need to look at all these implications and how the entire mechanism works in order to promote. And the other concern that we are having is with this COVID situation, the construction industry is the hardest hit. And there are delays, there are problems of materials, there are problems of labor. So this timeline, as everybody suggested, needs to be seriously looked at, because you issuing a permit for 1 year is no longer practical in the current situation. I think that needs to be seriously looked at, as Nissanka and Prasanna suggested, at least for a temporary period until this pandemic impact is there. We need to have some sort of flexibility to address these issues. I think in all, there were a lot of good things, but there are certain things that needs to have a very hard look, and some rationality in especially building classifications, building typologies, how certain things are being brought in. Now, for example, this height of buildings. I know earlier we had low rise, middle rise, high rise, and this has now come down to 5 floors. I don't see the rationale of simplifying that, because the whole process becomes more and more complicated when you have high-rise buildings. And so that needs to be seriously looked at. So I think overall, what we will do is we will try to summarize all the points that has been raised, all the clarifications that has been sought, and try to work out a document. And I hope UDA will seriously look at these things and go in for a revision. I think that I know there are a lot of discussions going on in various institutes. Sometimes this dialogue needs to go for a certain period, and to go in for an inclusive kind of things, and especially this how this existing buildings, conservation, heritage management, how these things are going to be integrated into this overall vision of a development plan is not clearly crystallized into regulations, so which needs to be provided. At least we should have a window where certain things can be decided at a planning committee level or at a various forums. That kind of exit is also not provided, so that needs to be included into this. And I wonder whether Nirmala and Yasantha could provide some clarifications for some of the things, but we can give about 5 minutes if they are willing to do that. Otherwise, I think we need to wind up. Yasantha, can you? Hello. Hello. Nirmala. Yeah. Some of the things, can you just say whether this? Yeah. Especially on this.
Thank you for the comments, and there are we know that there are such things that we have to develop in our Gazette document also. And I appreciate the comments received from all the panelists, and I will brief some points that they have raised. The one is the most reviewed comment is that renewal. The thing is, we also looking for positively to extend the time period up to 5 to 6 period, but there's a restriction which is came from the UD Act, because the 3-year period, the permit 3-year period came from the UD Act, not in the Gazette documents. So until we change the until we amend the UD Act, we can't allow construction period more than three years. But with UDA practice, we allowing them to have more extensions up to the 3-4 years, subject to take some renewal charges. The process is there, but we can accommodate in further amendments after we take in after we propose an amendment even for the UD Act, not for the Gazette. Okay, then second one is that someone has asked that whether this regulation could be added, could be used for existing developments. The answer is yes. and it can be accommodated for existing building also as an amendment to the existing development. If there is more floor area to be achieved as per the new regulation, then they can obtain it with as an amendment to the existing development. And also Mr. Navaratne said that validity period of the PPC also should be more than 1 year, but thing is there is a system to renew the PPC rather than 1 year, and also we considered the PPC until they apply for a building application. After they got approval from the urban development authority, they no need to go for a clearances for such utility clearances from there may be a water board, there may be electricity or such things. The thing is they have to apply for within one period of 1 year of time into the building approval. If they are unable to apply for such within such period, then there is a system to renew the PPC. And other than that,
Plnr Perera, I think we are very much over time. I think
Yeah,
we're
that's
almost
right.
1 hour over time.
Yeah.
So if we can conclude
I
today's
think so,
session.
yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
But can I excuse me? I think Plnr Silva, I think the DG or Lalit is there, the director. If the DG is there, can we give him a chance to get a clarification?
Yes, is Prasad around? Yeah. Looks like he's not there.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, it looks like he's not there. So, since we have almost overstepped the time, I think we need to wind up the session. There's only another point that I would like to add. Now, with all these restrictions, the land valuation, I think it is responsibility of the UDA to create an awareness with the valuers about the implications of this on these development options on the valuations, because with these restrictions, there will be certain implications with the market values and the current developable value, because we have this practice of taking valuations on a trend basis, not on a residual basis, and none of those regulations consider the use together with the volume of construction. So when you say 4-story building, a 4-story building can spread over a larger area of larger footprint, which can give a larger footprint or larger gross area, which can be a very complicated and complex building. So this type of, that's why I said the classification needs to be carefully looked into together with the users, and also this awareness on valuation also needs to be seriously taken into consideration in the implementation process. So with that, I think we should wind up. We will take into consideration all the clarifications that has been sent by the listeners. We will try to tabulate them and get clarifications on that. And we will also work out a document to be presented to the Urban Development Authority. And we hope Architect Navaratne, Prasanna and Nissanka will also help us to prepare this document when it is ready by commenting and giving their valuable observations and advice. And so with that, I think we will wind up this session. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and we participated in this. It was very useful to hear from the industry point of view how these regulations are affecting them. So I think UDA also can have a better understanding of the situation. So on behalf of the Institute of Town Planners, we thank everyone again for being with us tonight. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Just before we leave, I think Planner Jude Prasanna will give the closing remarks and vote of thanks. Okay, I think we are having some technical issues, so let's just conclude at that. Very sorry for that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Prasanna. Thank you, Nava. Thank you, Nissanka, for being here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Night.